All right, if you open your Bibles to Job chapter 4, hopefully what my plan is to take some Sunday nights. I'm not sure every Sunday night, but for the foreseeable future, we'll take some Sunday nights to actually look at the speeches that are given. And as you can see, we will take them in large segments. Eliphaz will give a speech. Job will answer. This will cover 4 chapters. We'll try to be able to do that amount, and so we'll move through Job fairly rapidly. But this is a part of Job that most of us don't know too well, and because of that, we miss out on a couple of things. We miss out on the flaws that we see that take place naturally during a trial so that we can prepare ourselves for a trial and not make the same mistakes. We also see the way the friends of Job respond to him as those who are supposed to be comforters, and he will eventually in chapter 16 say, "Miserable comforters are you all." So we want to understand how to properly help somebody in a trial. And there's a number of lessons that we will learn by looking at these speeches. So obviously this is a very large section in the Bible. When you think about us typically knowing chapters 1 and 2 and chapter 42, that's a lot of material in between the Holy Spirit wrote that He intends for us to know. And so my first reason for doing this is let's become familiar with some things that we're not that familiar with. And then secondly, let's prepare ourselves for a trial. And thirdly, let's prepare ourselves to help somebody that would be in a trial. So all of those things are extremely important. I'd like to start with just a quick overview, and then we're going to do this more as a discussion. First and foremost, the primary message we need to see from the friends of Job has to do with their speeches and how that they failed being comforters. So we want to examine that. How did they fail being a comforter? And let's put ourselves in Job's position and feel what kind of errors they are making so that we can empathize with the condition of Job. If we're going to be good comforters for a person in a trial, we need to empathize with the person in the trial. And in this case, we need to empathize with Job. We need to feel what he's going through. This is an extremely godly man. God has placed him at the top of the list of none like him in all the world. So that's pretty impressive. I don't think anybody would want to say, well, I think I can step in those shoes. Certainly not me. And when we see Job going through this, it is a great reminder here. And we also want to understand that we need to learn something from these friends. At the end of Job, they are rebuked, and they are rebuked soundly, and they are told that they had better go and ask Job to pray for them or they're dead. And so this is really serious. We have to understand that when someone around us is going through a trial, we also are going through a trial. How are we going to handle that? How are we going to treat them? What kind of care are we going to give for them? So we can commit great sins by not responding to someone else's trial properly. So that ought to be cause enough to prepare ourselves because we all deal with trials, and we have people around us that deal with trials, and members of this congregation deal with trials and deal with serious trials. And so it's important for us to be prepared for that. Might add another point here too, and I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but it is common for people who are going through trials to receive added abuse from friends. It's usually unintentional. It's not something that's meant, but in the desire to try to help, that is oftentimes ends up to be heaping abuse upon them. And many times it's because, as we're going to see with these friends, of starting to guess about things that you don't know about. You know, when somebody goes through a trial, you may not know what all led up to this. What are the antecedents to this? What brought this to this point? What's the other conditions that are involved here? There's a lot of things that surround what a person is going through that we oftentimes are very unaware of. I remember in my younger years eagerly devouring marriage seminars as much as I could get in me to try to be a better husband, and I'm still working on that with great failure at times. But one of the things that what really struck me was one of the speeches talked about to men. Your wife comes to you and wants to pour her heart out with you about things that are going wrong in her life and things that aren't working, and just wants to just let it out, you know. And he said the typical thing that a man wants to do is fix it. Okay, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. And she's like, I'm not interested in you fixing it. I'm interested in you listening. And most men who've been married very long have had that little speech. And sometimes, I mean, that's not just true with husband and wives, and true with friends, things like that. So what his advice is you sit there and listen and go, I'm so sorry. Of course, he was exaggerating just a bit. Don't try that at home. But at any rate, you see the point of it was be a good listener and empathize and feel what is going on. And that is some of the things that you see the friends failing at. So let's say a couple of things about Job's speeches. The primary did I get that opposite? The primary argument of Job's speeches is different than the speeches of the friends. We need to consider how he responds to the trial. Okay, this is question. Does Job make mistakes in this thing? Yeah, he does. Okay. In the end, he readily confesses to God and repents and asks God to forgive him. So we know that there are mistakes. We don't have to guess about that. There are. Lesson. When you go through a trial, you're going to goof up. You're going to make some mistakes. You're going to do things you look back and go, oh, what was in my mind? But the pressure that we go through pain, emotional pain, other kinds of pain, that works on our mind and eventually can cause us to make some mistakes. So how he responds to the trial is what we need to learn about and see what was good response, what was normal response, what was a response that he shouldn't have made. So we want to recognize that. And we want to understand what made this trial so severe. What made it something that was just so frustrating to him? And how will that then affect me when a similar kind of trial comes along? And thirdly, I would say, what kind of spiritual weaknesses does the trial expose in Job? That's one thing that you will notice in a trial. It will expose spiritual weaknesses that you have. It will expose things that you say, whoa, I did not realize I had that problem. As Teresa and I have often said, until I had children, I didn't realize I had thus and thus problem. So that can always pop up. Now, the primary argument of the friends is very simple. God rewards the righteous, and God takes away the rewards from the wicked. So they have a very simple, straightforward thing that they will repeat a number of times. Job, on the other hand, is more complicated. Job is not really primarily looking, and he doesn't really talk about, woe is me, I lost money. Woe is me, I lost wages. Woe is me, he never says anything about that. In fact, at the end of chapter 2, what did he say? The Lord has given, the Lord took away, blessed be the name of the Lord. That's not his concern. His concern is the things that have been taken from him indicate to him God's removal of his presence with him. That he cannot stand. This is horrifying to him. To lose God's company, God's love, God's care for him. He's never lived that way before. And it's heartbreaking to see him feel that God doesn't hear him anymore. God doesn't answer him anymore. This is the worst of the worst. What else would a godly man think? What else would a man who'd lived all his life in relationship with God, how else would you respond but to believe that you have been left all alone? And what has happened? He knows it's not his sin, and he argues with the friends repeatedly about it. But what is it? And the friends cannot answer. So that's just some of the heads up that we need to see. And so let's start with chapter 4 here, and we're going to take some paragraphs and move fairly rapidly. I'm going to ask for your comments on some of these. Look at chapter 4, 1 through 5. Is Eliphaz the Temanite? By the way, where is Teman? Edom. Thank you. You get to go to heaven. Yeah. Teman is one of the major cities in Edom. So he's a descendant of Esau. Esau had a son named Teman. You can go back in Genesis 36 and read about that. Okay, so he says, if one ventures a word with you, will you be impatient? Yet who can keep from speaking? Behold, you have instructed many, and you have strengthened the weak hands. Your words have upheld him who was stumbling, and you have made firm the feeble knees. But now it has come to you, and you are impatient. It touches you, and you are dismayed. Is not your fear of God your confidence, and the integrity of your ways your hope? Okay, so what is just your initial feel? This is just the opening up. By the way, Job has already made a speech. So let's cut the friends a little slack here. They've waited 7 days. Job went ahead and started the speech. And then now they feel like, hey, I think we can comment. Eliphaz seems to be the oldest. He seems to speak for the others as well at this. So how are you feeling about this opening, how he opens this? Any quick comments? Yes, Michael.
Seems like they've seen him in other situations where Job has been the one saying, like, you mentioned you can do this.
Yeah.
It's almost like, hey, why are you changing from that tune now?
Yeah, so it's he seems to start fairly gently. By the way, if you compared Eliphaz's third speech, you'd say, boy, he made a 180. He blisters him in the third speech. But the first speech, he starts out somewhat gently, but then, as Michael said, he says, you know, you helped other people in this situation. Now it comes to you, and you're just falling apart. This doesn't seem to be the right way to respond to this. So you can see this idea. All right, very good. So let's just take this next section. Verse 6, I inadvertently read along with that. Isn't your fear of God your confidence, integrity of your ways, your hope? Remember who that was innocent ever perished, or where were the upright cut off? As I have seen, those who plow iniquity and sow trouble reap the same. By the breath of God they perish, and by the blast of his anger they are consumed. The roar of the lion, the voice of the fierce lion, the teeth of the young lions are broken. The strong lion perishes for lack of prey, and the cubs of the lioness are scattered. All right, so you will notice here his argument. What would you just say his argument is? Just a brief comment. What's yes, God's. Yeah, well, but why is what's his? But yeah, that's true. But God, what's his argument? Do you notice? especially mentions it in verse 7. How does verse 7 express his argument? Yeah, he just says, no one has ever gone through what you go through and been innocent. So look at what is happening to you. You're skin and bones. You got boils everywhere. You're in misery. You're crying out for help. And you don't even understand that it's very simple. You're a lousy sinner. You're just terrible. And nobody's ever perished that is innocent. That's just not so. So what is the flaw in that argument? Well, it's just not true. Yeah. Can you think of some people who suffered greatly, who were innocent? Job himself, obviously, yes. Who else in the Bible? Pardon?
That cry out from heaven.
Okay, yeah, in the book of Revelation, the people who were beheaded for the cause of Christ because they stood for the cause of Christ. So persecution and death and all these things has happened to righteous people forever. It just doesn't make any sense to say that. Now, his argument is basically from just one point of view. In the Proverbs, that might be true. Bad things happen from foolish decisions. Good things happen from good decisions. Generally speaking, not always, but generally speaking, that's true. So one of the things you're going to notice about Eliphaz and all the friends, they're going to say a lot of true statements. They just don't apply to Job. They just don't apply in this situation. It's one thing to say something true, but it's another thing to make it the application in that situation. Some of the things they're going to say is even quoted in the New Testament by Paul and says it's right. But it has to be taken in the proper context. So to Eliphaz, there's only two options. You're either innocent and blessed, you're not innocent and punished. But how about some other options here? Well, the righteous do suffer, obviously. Not only that, the unrighteous and unrepentant people do suffer. So do not suffer. I'm summarizing Eliphaz's argument here. Do not suffer. But what are some of the other options? And you've mentioned the righteous at times don't suffer. But what's a couple of other options? Adam?
There's a whole timing problem.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just because someone doesn't suffer in this moment for their sin, that's not indicative that they'll never suffer for it. And similarly, just because I'm not blessed now for my righteousness, that doesn't mean that I'll never be blessed for my righteousness.
That's right. And actually, Eliphaz is going to bring that up in a moment. He'll say, yeah, you start out real well, but eventually it all caves on you. You think of another option?
Simple people sometimes prosper.
Yeah, simple as that. They do. Yeah, that's exactly right. Think of another option. Okay, yeah. Time and chance happens to everybody. Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verses 11 and 12. Time and chance happens to everybody. So you have, sometimes we suffer because of the foolishness and sin of somebody else, book of Proverbs. And sometimes it's just things that are time and chance, Ecclesiastes 9, 11, and 12. So there's some things here that Eliphaz simply has not considered. Let's go on to verse 12. And he says, now a word was brought to me stealthily. My ear received. By the way, I forgot to mention one other thing. Look back at verse 8. As I have seen. So he's basing his conclusions on?
His life experience.
Yeah, his life experience. Well, that's pretty poor. So, that it is very unscientific. That just because you have not experienced something doesn't mean it hasn't happened. And so that's important. So he says, now a word was brought to me stealthily. My ear received the whisper of it. Amid thoughts from visions of the night, when deep sleep falls on men, dread came upon me and trembling, which made all my bones shake. A spirit glided past my face. The hair of my flesh stood up. I stood still, but I could not discern its appearance. A form was before my eyes. There was silence. Then I heard a voice. Can mortal man be in the right before God? Can a man be pure before his Maker? Even in his servants he puts no trust. In his angels he charges with error. How much more those who dwell in the houses of clay, whose foundation is in the dust, who are crushed like the moth. Between morning and evening they are beaten to pieces. They perish forever without anyone regarding it. Is not their tent cord plucked up with them? Do they not die, and that without wisdom? So, what is he claiming happened that gave him this information? He had a dream or a vision. He really makes it real, doesn't he? Oh man, something, spirit just glided past me and past my face. The hair on my head stood up and on my flesh. And oh, this was just something. And then he even spoke and said this and this and this and this. And his argument is, again, pretty similar. Everybody sins. Well, has Job ever claimed that he was perfect? No, that's not it. So you always have an idea of him drawing conclusions that don't really face Job. And if God really intended to reveal a message, why didn't he just reveal it to Job? If there was some message Job needed to hear, why is he giving it to Eliphaz where Job couldn't even trust what Eliphaz is saying? Can you think of some alternative explanation to Eliphaz's, quote, vision or dream? I mean, let's just say for a moment that it actually happened, that he believed he had a dream, a vision. By the way, is it in those days, how did God reveal himself? Through dreams, at night, things like that. So it's not out of the question, certainly, but if it didn't come from God, what would be an alternative explanation?
Part of Satan's plan.
Yeah, Satan could have injected that in his head. Good, that's exactly right. What would be another one? What happens even in our dreams? We influence our dreams. So crazy things come in our head. We've been thinking about something a lot. So, he's been many days with Job. He's thinking of ways he can help Job, and he has a dream, and this takes place in the dream, and it's really affected by his own thinking, not necessarily something that came from God. And so, again, it's kind of hard to put that in there. And even if the message were true, Job had not claimed this kind of righteousness and equality with God that he shouldn't ever have to suffer. That is, you pressed the argument actually too far. All right, look at chapter 5. Notice what he says here. He says, "Call now. Is there anyone who will answer you? To which of the holy ones will you turn? Surely vexation kills the fool, and jealousy slays the simple. I have seen the fool taking root, but suddenly I cursed his dwelling. His children are far from safety. They're crushed in the gate, and there is no one to deliver them. The hungry eat his harvest, and he takes it even out of thorns. And the thirsty pant after his wealth. For affliction does not come from the dust, nor does trouble sprout from the ground. But man is born to trouble as sparks fly upward." Okay, you notice just verses 1 and 2, it seems like it's a mock here, where he says, you cried out and you're complaining and all this. Did you really expect somebody to answer you? You really expect some angel to come and tell you something? To which of these holy ones? Why, this vexation that you do is going to kill the fool. What's he just subtly... You notice Eliphaz doesn't say, "You're a fool." He just says, when you do these things, the shoe fits, wear it. And you seem to be a real fool here when you are arguing this way. So what do you see in this little paragraph that is pretty offensive. There's four of them you see offensive? Yeah, he just subtly said, you're the fault that your kids are dead. Can you imagine saying that to somebody who's lost all 10 children in one day? Well, if you were just a better person, all 10 of them wouldn't have died. You're such a fool. That's why they died. See what I mean by heaping abuse on somebody who is going through something really bad? Let's just say it were true. This isn't the timing. This is not when you do this. This is cruel to him. And I can just imagine Job hearing these things and just crushing him this way. So you see this picture that he gives. And again, you see this idea in verse 3. Second time he said that. I have seen anecdotal evidence. I have seen this happen, and how this is just something that takes place when somebody is a fool. Look at verse 8. As for me, I would seek God, and to God would I commit my cause, who does great things and unsearchable and marvelous things without number. He gives rain on the earth and sends waters on the fields. He sets on high those who are lowly, and those who mourn are lifted to safety. He frustrates the devices of the crafty so that their hands achieve no success. He catches the wise in their own craftiness, 1 Corinthians chapter 1 or 3. And the schemes of the wily are brought to quick end. They meet with darkness in the daytime and grope at noontime in the night. But he saves the needy from the sword of their mouth and from the hand of the mighty. So the poor have hope, and injustice shuts her mouth. Behold, blessed is the one whom God reproves. Therefore despise not the discipline of the Almighty. Hebrews chapter 12. For he wounds, but he binds up. He shatters, but his hands heal. He will deliver you from 6 troubles. In 7 no evil will touch you. In famine he will redeem you from death, and in war from the power of the sword. You shall be hidden from the lash of the tongue, and shall not fear destruction when it comes. At destruction and famine you will laugh, and you shall not fear the beast of the earth. For you shall be in league with the stones of the field, and you shall know that your tent is at peace. And you shall inspect your fold and miss nothing. You shall know also that your offspring shall be many, and your descendants as the grass of the earth. You shall come to your grave in a ripe old age, and Job will, like a sheaf gathered up in the season. Behold, this we have searched out. It is true. Hear and know it for your good. About that time, if I'm Job, I say, come here, let me smack you. It's just, what kind of goofball comment is this? Are you kidding? So what does he just in essence say? Abracadabra.
If you just ask God, it will all go away.
Yeah. All you got to do is just say, I'm sorry. I repent of those horrible sins I've committed. And voila, by morning, everything will come back. It is just going to be magic. Prayer is just magic. God he's like a genie in a bottle. You just rub the bottle and he pops out and he just does whatever you ask immediately because he's at your beck and call. Oh, utter silliness.
But he does give power to God, and praise God in his power.
Oh, yeah, but the idea that that's the way God functions is crazy. There's nothing to that. Just step back for a moment. Take it out of this Job context. Think of somebody that you have seen, or right now do see, going through a very, very severe trial, and think about you saying this to them. Called my brother just a few days ago to see how he was doing. And this made me think of this. He in Christmas time, he and Alicia went to visit the grandchildren. They came down with the stomach flu. When they saw that the kids were getting sick, Mark immediately left to get away because he has no immunity right now. And he came down with it that evening. So that was Christmas time. He still has it because the immune system won't kick it. He's lost 18 pounds. He can't hardly get up anymore. He can't eat anything. He just has to choke it down. He can't, any food he looks at, he says, Barry, it's like, have you ever imagined somebody's trying to shove food at you that when you're in the middle of the stomach flu? You couldn't even dream it. Now, Mark, I don't think weighed more than about 135 pounds when this started, and he's lost 18, so he's down around 120. Danny knows my brother. You have no idea what this must look like right now. So if it doesn't change, this will probably be what takes him. But can you imagine me talking to him and saying, well, Mark, if you just confess your sins and go to God in prayer, it'll be done by tomorrow. Why don't you give up and submit to God? Oh, my word. You can't hardly imagine saying something more cruel than to suggest such a thing. That this is your fault, and all you got to do is snap your fingers and it'll all go away. What a crazy thing. It really helps to read these things as if you would be saying them to somebody that you know is suffering. And you then get the impact of how crazy it is. So obviously the problem with the advice is it's just not the way this is not the way God functions, and you're assuming something about God that he has never promised here. So Job's just not seeing, Job isn't seeking the restoration of his blessings, and that's what they look at. Oh, you just get all these blessings back, everything will be great, you'll fight battles, you'll be great, everything is going, and he's missing the point. Michael?
So could you talk for a second about, obviously this is a flawed point of view for Job, and then the New Testament writers quote these things, how that jives.
Well, because the New Testament writers are taking a truth from what they are saying and applying it in an actual right situation compared to the mistake that they're making. This is one thing it's interesting that they do say a lot of true things. It's just not applicable to Job. That's what we have to be careful of. You go quoting a passage to somebody. Is the passage true? Yeah. Does it fix their problem? No. It's not in that context. Good question. That's exactly right. Okay, go on to chapter 6. And now Job is going... Oh, excuse me. Sorry, I'm sorry.
I want to say, on that principle, I was thinking about what Michael just brought up. On the surface, there's really not a lot wrong with the advice that's given. It's the circumstance that it's in the wrong place.
Exactly.
He asks him to seek God. That's good advice.
Yeah.
He asks him to trust God. That's good advice. He even offers hope for something different in the outcome. That's true. And when you think of, in the middle of this chapter, in verse 17, I'm going to ask you a comment about this. It actually brings up the thought of discipline, God's discipline, and what we gain, the blessings we gain from God's discipline. Paul uses that. James uses that.
Right.
That joy in our tribulation.
Right.
Why? Because it produces steadfastness, truth, and brotherhood.
Yeah.
All these things that they emphasize. Well, it's no different than what Eliphaz is saying here.
Yeah.
It's the circumstance that goes in and makes it the wrong path to take to try to comfort him.
That's right.
I think it is
You
the point.
hit the nail on the head. That's exactly right. Exactly. By the way, you notice in verse 8, chapter 5, as for me, I would I just love that. Oh, so easy for you to say what you would do if you were in my situation. Oh, my. You who have never suffered anything close to what I'm going through, Job would be thinking. How sad that you would be thinking that way. Okay, so by the way, if Job had followed Eliphaz's advice, it would prove that Satan was correct. Just voila, do the right thing, confess your sins, and God will immediately take care of everything, because after all, that's what Satan said. The only reason he serves you is because of the blessings that you give him. And so he would have proven God, or Satan, right, that he would do that. So Job then replies here. Job had replies, and in this reply, I want you to see how he first just answers his word, the accusation of his rash words. So he answers and says, "Oh, that my vexation were weighed and all my calamity laid in the balances, for then it would be heavier than the sand of the sea. And for therefore my words have been rash." So you notice how Job says, "Yeah, I know. Yeah, I've uttered rash words. But you have no idea what I'm going through." So what lesson do we learn from that? Cut people a little slack. Cut some slack here. We need to understand that there are expectations that we have oftentimes of how a trial ought to go and how a person ought to respond to a trial. But the pain and shock of the trial will lead anybody to making some rash words and rash statements. And you have to cut the slack. You have to cut the slack with yourself. You have to be careful of this, obviously. When we go through this, you have to be careful. But that's something that is very, very dangerous. And but compassion. And that's what Job says. Hey, come on, guys. You can't take me that seriously. I am beside myself as to what is going on here. Notice verse 6 and 7. ESV doesn't show this. Can that which is tasteless be eaten without salt, or is there any taste in the juice of the mallow? Some of the other versions say, your words are like the white of an egg, uncooked, unseasoned, disgusting, and loathsome. You know, you'd have to really salt it to make it worth anything, and that's the way, it's like, Job's just like, oh my goodness, would you guys cut it out? It is just like a tasteless egg that you're giving. Look at verses 8 through 13. Oh, that I might have my request, and that God will fulfill my hope, that it would please God to crush me, that he would let loose his hand and cut me off. This would be my comfort. I would even exult in pain unsparing. For I have not denied the words of the Holy One. What is my strength that I should wait? And what is my end that I should be patient? Is my strength the strength of stones, or is my flesh bronze? Have I any help in me when resource is driven from me? And so what he does here, he's back to his desire to die. But then is turning around and saying, I know it's coming. I have to die. Why are you letting me linger? This is senseless. This is crazy. I'm going to die. Leave me alone and let me die. You think you can get to that point? Sure. I'm sure that some of the ones that we know in this church that have passed away came to the point that they're lingering longer than they just feel like this has got to end. I can't take this any longer. It is so very difficult. Look on at verse 14. He who withholds kindness from a friend forsakes the fear of the Almighty. That's what you guys are doing, and it's violating God's will when you do this. My brothers are treacherous as a torrent bed, as torrential streams that pass away, which are dark with ice, where the snow hides itself. When they melt, they disappear. When it is hot, they vanish from their place. The caravans turn aside from their course. They go up in the waste and perish. The caravans of Tema look, and the travelers of Sheba hope. They are ashamed because they were confident content, they come here and are disappointed. For you have now become nothing, and you see my calamity and are afraid. Have I said, make me a gift, or from your wealth offer a bribe to me, or deliver me from the adversary's hand, or redeem me from the hand of the ruthless? Teach me, and I will be silent. See his attitude? I was hoping you'd give me a drink of fresh water. You're like one of those wadis in the desert that just evaporate, and the traveler comes looking for water and they have none. And you've given me nothing. I'm not asking a bribe. I'm not asking money from you. I'm asking you to teach me, why is this happening? What's going on? Make me understand. They can't do that because they got a one-track mind. Verse 25, how forceful are upright words, but what does reproof from you reprove? All you're doing is whacking on me. You're not teaching me. Do you think that you can reprove words when the speech of a despairing man is wind? He's like admitting, I know, I have rash words, but would you do something? You would even cast lots over the fatherless and bargain over your friend. That's some pretty strong words there. But now be pleased to look at me, for I will not lie to your face. Please turn. Let no injustice be done. Turn now. My vindication is at stake. Is there any injustice in my tongue? Cannot my palate discern the cause of calamity? So he gives good advice to them. Concentrate on helping teach me. Show me where I need to understand. But you're not doing anything to comfort me. His desire from his friends is to help him and help him understand. So, important lesson. It's hardly a time to give instructions to a person who is suffering about, if you just live a righteous life, things would change pretty rapidly. And I could just sit here and give you a nice list of the mistakes that you've made in your life that I'm aware of, and let me just give you some instruction on this. One other here. Cannot my palate discern the cause of calamity? Okay, now you might not catch the emphasis here. When a person goes through a really very serious trial, the tendency is to believe somehow they have become a fool and they cannot even reason anymore. And you have to go and put them through kindergarten. You see that? Because you look at them and you say, well, obviously somehow they've been a real fool to be in this situation and have this happen. And so you begin to instruct them and you begin to tell them what they've done wrong and all of this, and all of a sudden you're looking at them as if they didn't have any sense at all. All right. Well, it would take maybe 10 minutes to do the next one, so we'll wait for that for next time. But Job, and let me just show you here. Job in this last part emphasizes the character of a trial, and it's so important. Job has lived through the shock of the trial, but now here's what takes place. He is dealing with how the trial has continued and is prolonged. Very important. It's typical to have trials. Trials hit all the time. But we can see the resolve of it. We can see the end of it. But in this case, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. There's no restoration, no hope for restoration. There's no way he can see anything is going to be fixed here. And so this indicates to us, he gives the analogy of a hired hand. We can talk about that next time. But the lesson here is most trials that we deal with in our life have a natural resolve. We can actually see an end to it. We say, well, it's tough right now. Probably within a few months, this will all work out. And most of the time it does. But Then there's that trial. A trial that Elihu will later say happens 2 or 3 times only in a man's life. And that trial is different. And the toughness of that trial is it just keeps going. It doesn't seem like there is an end. And that's when it really tests our faith. So we'll leave it with that. We'll talk a little bit more about that then next time. So very good. We'll take a time to sing the song right now, and obviously love if anyone needs any help or prayers about anything, please let that be known. All together we stand and sing.